Okay, I'm Danielle Friend, a Director of Science and Regulatory Affairs at the Biotechnology Innovation Organization, or BIO. I also would like to thank the meeting organizers. We've had some great talks today and hopefully some great discussion following this. So BIO is the world's largest trade association representing biotechnology companies, academic institutions, and state biotechnology centers and other related organizations, both within the United States and across the world. I think we had a great introduction today by Amy, who kind of gave us a general overview of policies related to rare disease and orphan drug development. And then Paul gave a great overview of the Orphan Drug Act and how that has impacted drug development in the recent years. I thought I'd extend upon the conversations that they just presented and talk about some more recent policies that really we hoped that will impact rare disease drug development in the near future. The first topic that I wanted to highlight was patient-focused drug development. So during PDUFA 5, as you'll remember, Amy mentioned PDUFA, which is the reauthorization of the Prescription Drug User Fee Act. PDUFA 5 happened 5 years ago. There was a large push from patient organizations and other stakeholders to more systematically include patient voice throughout the drug development process. And with that, patient-focused drug development became a big element of PDUFA 5. So when PDUFA 5 was passed, it really set up a situation where the FDA could more systematically gather patients' perspectives related to their condition and the treatment of their condition. Over the course of PDUFA 5, the FDA held 25 internally led patient-focused drug development meetings where they invited patient organizations in to talk about their condition and learn more from patients themselves. So they learned more about what the current burden of disease was, what the current burden of treatment was, patients' perspectives, and until this point, that hadn't really been done in a systematic fashion. Several stakeholders also held their own externally led patient-focused drug development meetings. As you can imagine, 25 meetings, although that's a great start, certainly does not encompass all of the disease areas that should be covered in such meetings. So several organizations had their own externally led meetings where they, again, hosted patients to talk about their disease and invited the FDA to come and listen. And several of these meetings focused in on the rare disease space. Now, patient-focused drug development can have a huge impact on drug development in general, but I think in the case of rare diseases, it can have a dramatic effect on drug development. So as many of you are aware, rare diseases, just by their very nature, have limited patient populations, and oftentimes randomized controlled clinical studies can be very difficult and sometimes not feasible. So the inclusion of additional data sets like patient experience data and real-world evidence can help add to the data sets that are collected by sponsors to really bolster the other data sets that they're collecting. Additionally, as many of you know, oftentimes the natural history of these rare diseases is not very well understood, and by allowing, again, patient-focused or patient experience data as well as real-world evidence in collecting natural history studies can really add to that data and help us to better understand diseases more fully. Since PDUFA 5, there have been 2 additional pieces of legislation that have really tried to expand upon patient-focused drug development and really hold the FDA to continuing these efforts. The first being the 21st Century Cures Act, and the second being PDUFA 6, which is the most recent version of PDUFA that was passed in the fall of 2017. These 2 pieces of legislation really added a lot of requirements for the FDA in order to, again, ensure that this patient-focused drug development continued. 2 of the pieces that I'd like to highlight include those that require the FDA to both develop and release guidance documents related to patient experience data and the FDA's thoughts on patient experience data. These guidance documents will inform not only sponsors and reviewers internally within the FDA, but also any other stakeholders, including patient organizations who plan to submit patient experience data to the FDA. Additionally, this legislation also requires the FDA to hold public meetings to gather stakeholders' opinions on patient experience data. That way the FDA can use that information moving forward when they develop their guidance documents. I think we experienced one of those meetings back in December of 2017. The FDA held one of their first meetings on patient experience data, and we'll have another one in mid to late March of this year. And I think it's a really great opportunity for all stakeholders, including patient organizations, to engage with the FDA and put forward your thoughts related to patient experience data. The next piece that I want to talk about was the Orphan Drug Modernization Plan. So I think Paul provided a really good introduction of the Orphan Drug Act and the incentives that were provided via the Orphan Drug Act. He mentioned that during the process of developing medications for rare diseases, companies or sponsors receive what's called an orphan drug designation. The FDA identified that they had actually a backlog of these designations in their hands in 2017. In order to address that, the FDA developed their Orphan Drug Modernization Plan in June of 2017 to really address that backlog. So they put forward several activities to help decrease that backlog of designations that they held. Several of those things being developing a SWAT team that focused solely on reviewing those designations. They also streamlined some review templates that made work easier for both the sponsors and the FDA. They minimized discretionary work of reviewers, so reviewers, again, could focus solely on reviewing those orphan drug designation requests. And they also established and really provided a framework for collaborating with other centers and divisions within the FDA to review those designations. So for example, they developed a collaboration with the Office of Pediatric Therapeutics to jointly review any rare pediatric disease designations that were received. I can happily say that by the end of August of 2017, the FDA had actually gone through their entire backlog, so they've now gotten rid of this backlog moving forward. In addition to getting rid of that backlog, the FDA also outlined that they would like to, in the future, be able to address 100% of the new orphan drug designations that they receive within 90 days of receipt. And so again, the FDA put forward several activities in which would help them accomplish this goal. Again, restructuring within the FDA to minimize or to maximize expertise and to improve workload efficiencies. They also reduced Office of Orphan Drug Products office workload, again, so that they could focus on getting through these designations. I do want to, again, refer back to what Paul mentioned in that the Orphan Drug Act provides a lot of great incentives to companies to really invest in this area. And again, with the FDA recognizing that they had a backlog and addressing that, it really provides sponsors with a greater appreciation for the fact that the FDA is getting through these backlogs and they feel comfortable and want to invest in rare disease drug development moving forward. The last element that I want to mention is a recent announcement made by the FDA related to budget requests. The FDA recently announced that there have been budget requests indicating that the FDA will have the resources to continue current funding programs at consistent levels, and they'll also be able to support their current public health mission. But in addition to those funds that were provided via the request, there have also been $400 million in additional funding to advance planned initiatives to further promote innovation and competition. And the FDA has outlined a framework really outlining how they plan to use this money. And one of those being developing clinical trial networks to create an understanding of natural history and clinical outcomes for rare diseases. So as I mentioned earlier, the natural history of rare diseases is often not well understood. Furthermore, obtaining the number of individuals needed for clinical trials can often be very difficult in the rare disease space. And so the FDA has now recognizing that with these additional funds, they plan to, again, bolster clinical trial networks and focus in on natural history study designs. And so with that, I think we're happy to take any questions.